Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everyone. My name's Julie Quinn and I am the Australian Schools Director of Writers Toolbox. And our event is being held on the traditional lands of the Turrbal people and the Jagera people, and we wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners. I would also like to pay our respects to their elders past and present and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Well, my background is that I've been in education for over 30 years, with the past 15 years as Dean of Studies at an all-boys school of 1,500 from years 5 to 12. In my final years, the school introduced Writers Toolbox, and I saw firsthand the impact on teachers and students. And now, across the past 4 years, working with Writers Toolbox, I've witnessed many inspirational stories where the impact of the program has not just been in improved writing for students, but also in the students' confidence and self-esteem. For some, it has literally changed their pathway in life. Many of you sitting here today have come with your own stories, where you have witnessed students with D and E grades achieve C and B grades, and A students move to A+. And you have celebrated as a school as both your internal and external results have made significant improvements. At the same time, teachers of all subjects have been given a program that allows them to explicitly teach writing, a skill that many tell us they have no instruction in. And schools now have a common language and a whole school approach to writing. Indeed, in our knowledge-based society, the ability to communicate in the written form has never been so vital. To explore this impact, I'd now like to introduce our speaker this evening and the author of the study, Dr. Ian Hunter. Dr. Hunter is a best-selling author and award-winning academic. A qualified historian, Ian has held positions at 4 universities, including Leverhulme Visiting Professor at Reading University in the UK. He has over 100 publications, including 20 books, and his research has been published in some of the world's leading academic journals. In 2008, Ian began what has now become a lifelong journey to help schools tackle the global writing gap. This work has now expanded to an international program that is seeing literacy levels improve in schools across Australia and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ian Hunter.
Thank you, Julie. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming, and thank you for those who are joining us online. This evening we're going to talk about one of the largest writing research projects ever undertaken in Australia, and what occurs when you change how you teach writing across 71 schools and 78,000 students. And the correct place to begin this discussion is certainly with an acknowledgement of thanks. For we would not be here this evening if it wasn't for the commitment and the hard work of the teachers and school leaders in those schools and their faith that this method of writing instruction could lead to better outcomes, and their tenacity and their professionalism to see it through, from the first-year teacher to the 30-year veteran. Thank you all. I'd also like to thank the Toolbox team, the coaches who spearhead this work on the ground, the developers, the educators, the AI experts, all behind the Toolbox system. And I'd also like to thank Julie Quinn, whose statistical skills, certainly not mine, but hers, helped make this study possible. And I'd like to thank my wife and my family for their unwavering support across these years. I don't know if my children would say I'm a patient man, but I've waited a long time for tonight. As was mentioned earlier, my journey began in the 1990s when, while still a university professor, my university students were struggling with writing and wanting answers. Typically, their questions were not what to do, but how to do it. Practical, reliable, easy to understand answers to the problems they were facing was what they were searching for. And so, after teaching and writing about this topic, in 2011, I left the university and began to work with schools. That work has now culminated into a decade-long research project in how we might fashion a system that could transform writing outcomes in our schools. And while I saw evidence of change early on, I wanted to know that this system could work in a much larger schooling environment and over a sustained period of time. Working in Australia these past 4 years has provided me that opportunity. And tonight is the culmination of that study. I've broken this presentation into 3 segments. Firstly, I'd like to offer some initial comments on writing. Secondly, we're going to have a brief look at the writing system itself, how and why it works the way it does. And finally, we're going to look at the results of this study. So writing. That writing matters is not disputed. Professors Steve Graham and Karen Harris, 2 of the United States experts in the area of writing, said in a 2015 study, in today's digital world, writing is an integral part of work. More than 90% of white-collar and 80% of blue-collar workers, their jobs involve writing. In a separate paper written about students, Graham and Harris said failure to acquire strong writing abilities restricts opportunities for both post-secondary, education, and employment. They're correct. Or, as researchers Doug Lemov, Colleen Driggs, and Erica Woolway said so eloquently in their recent book, writing is the coin of the realm, the currency in which ideas are most widely circulated and valued. If you cannot put it in writing, you aren't assured of full credit. And that statement, we are referring to both school and to life. Writing matters. But we have a problem, not only in Australia, but in many countries right now with student writing. Our students, tens of thousands of them, are struggling with writing. They are not getting the full credit that Lemov talks about. And they are not getting the full opportunity for the education and employment opportunities they wish to pursue. Something is going wrong. As a nation, Australia took action early in the face of this problem. Following the launch of PISA testing by the OECD in 2020, politicians and educators knew that getting more Australians into post-school qualifications was a pathway to transforming families and communities. And in a bid to strengthen school accountability and to provide better information about children's performance, NAPLAN standardised testing was introduced in 2008. It was the first time over 1 million Australian students, years 3, 5, 7 and 9, had been tested. And NAPLAN, despite its critics, remains a bold educational initiative. Australia now has one of the most comprehensive standardised testing systems in the world. However, by the time of the 2018 10-year review of NAPLAN, a twofold trend appeared between reading and writing. Across nearly all Australian states, the percentage of Year 9 students meeting the benchmark in reading was 94% or better. That was good. However, like the experience of the British literacy strategy, writing results in Australia showed the complete inverse pattern. Approximately 20% of all Australian Year 9 students no longer met the minimum standard for writing. Indeed, 2018 was the lowest writing scores since NAPLAN was introduced, and 2019 continued this pattern. Indeed, as a young Australian, your writing seemed to worsen the older you got. In Year 3, for example, only 2% of Australian youngsters were below the national minimum standard for writing, but by Year 9, it was 16%. Said one commentator, there are likely many possible explanations for the reported decline in writing achievement, but one thing is clear. There needs to be a national conversation about how best to teach, assess, and engage young Australians in writing. Because the results were suggesting the longer you stayed in our schooling system, the worse you got. It's also clear that students were only part of the challenge in front of us. In a recent survey of 4,000 New South Wales teachers by Wyatt Smith and Jackson, 2/3 said they were not prepared at all, or only minimally prepared, to teach writing or to give students feedback on written work. Fixing the writing problem is not just about doing something with our students. It's first and foremost teaching our teachers, once again, how to teach writing. The question is, what do we do? And one response might be to teach them to read more. It's a plausible enough response. Reading and writing, of course, they both use words. So schools and school districts invested considerable funds in reading programs with the tacit belief that somehow better reading skills would translate into better writing skills. Yet we've known for 5 decades, since the 1970s, and most recently researched by the Carnegie Foundation of New York, that improvements in reading do not translate into improvements in writing. Said one researcher in 1977, if reading is a process of decoding and writing is encoding, it would seem we need to teach students 2 opposing sets of skills. Or, as the authors of a recent publication looking at the effects on struggling writers in schools today said, in reading, the meaning-making process requires the child to follow text signals to reconstruct the meaning of the text. In writing, it requires the child to generate meaning and the organisation of that meaning and signals for the reader to connect information in the produced text. In short, they said, reading's comprehension, writing's mainly production. If we need any more further encouragement that reading more in our schools today in Australia is not going to give us better writing outcomes, we just need to look at ourselves. Australia today is the world's biggest case study that reading skills and writing skills are not connected. Here is Australia's reading result from the 2018 ACARA review of NAPLAN. This is Year 9. Reading is not shooting upwards at a great rate, but neither is it moving downwards. And if reading and writing were connected, then Australia's writing performance would look something like this. But writing doesn't look like this in this great country. Australia's writing line is this. Reading and writing are going in opposite directions. It's almost as if the more we focus on reading, the worse our writing becomes. Perhaps the answer is teaching more grammar. They can't write because they need more of the fundamentals drilled into them. It's timely to examine this question because in 2006, the largest ever systematic study into the impact of grammar teaching on writing performance in schools was completed. The team, led by Professor Richard Andrews from York University — Rich has now moved to Edinburgh University and is one of Europe's leading scholars on literacy and rhetoric — examined every research study produced in the 20th century. And they found this. And yet we persist. We persist teaching grammar, thinking somehow it will lift writing quality. Yet, yes, grammar's useful, absolutely. But we are misled if we think that grammar teaching is the route to improve writing quality. In fact, said Andrews, such a conviction flies in the face of research evidence from the 20th century. Multiple studies showed training in formal grammar did not improve pupils' composition. In fact, some studies showed it made it worse. So if more reading is not the answer to better writing, and more grammar won't fix it, what's the answer? And this is the question I was asking myself as I sat in my office in Auckland University, looking into the eyes of a student who was struggling to write. They did not want to be told to go away and read more, nor did they want to be told to work more on their relative clauses or transitive verbs. They needed a simple, practical, easy to understand answer to an immediate problem they were facing. So I went to work. I spent my academic life teaching in a business school, but I'm an historian by training. So when faced with a problem, my practice is to look back. As an historian, I cannot assume that the way we do things now necessarily is the best way we have ever done it. So I went back through 150 years of writing research internationally. I wanted to find out what worked and what didn't. There have been 4 great phases in the history of writing instruction. The first was the age of composition. It lasted from 1860 to about 1914, at the start of the First World War, when scholars and educators grappled with how we might teach the art and the form of writing to entire school systems. And during this time, writing was taught by principals. Students learnt matters of form, style, structure, concision, argumentation, fluency. They learnt sentence styles and rules of composition. And this resonated with me. I could see here solutions to the magnitude of the problem we were facing today. So I took sentence styles from this period, because teachers used to teach not just what a sentence is, but what it does to a reader. And you learn the function of a sentence. And I ended up with 12 sentence styles that I found could improve a child's syntactical maturity, raise their fluency, generate authentic voice, and rapidly lift the quality of their written work. But more than that, using advances in neuroscience and in particular the work of Daniel Kahneman, I knew that teaching 12 sentence styles could become implicit in the child's long-term memory and automatic. And as the mental sweat of casting a sentence or starting a piece of writing moved from working memory to the subconscious, the skill of sentence writing could become an autonomous reflex. And I built in matters of form and composition style from the 1800s because teachers needed more. You can write a grammatically perfect piece of writing, and that writing can be illogical, overwritten, superficial, pompous nonsense. Teachers needed more. They needed the rules of composition. And before you grammar boffins get your dictionaries out, yes, I made up Pompilius, but it just seemed to fit. It was this wonderful blend of pompous and supercilious. Pompilius. And I added in multiple forms of the paragraph because we are the first generation of teachers in history, the first, to only teach one form of the paragraph, or even think that to have a school adopt a single form of a paragraph, Peel, might be the route to better writing outcomes. It is shameful. We are destining our students to underperformance. Teachers 100 years ago knew that writers wrote various forms of the paragraph according to the thinking processes being revealed on a page, and they taught those. So I built 8 paragraph forms that are progressively taught to the child as they get older, and they need to be. Writing research for some time has been saying we need to teach our young people increasingly sophisticated writing skills as they get older. You can't just stop teaching composition at primary school. To say deeper things, they need more sophisticated writing skills. And as scholars Appleby and Langer have argued, we need an easy-to-understand, explicit method of writing instruction that would accommodate all subject areas in a school. And we do need this because writing is everywhere. And I took the best of what I knew about organisational change because transforming practice in a large schooling system is not an exercise in knowledge. It's an exercise in change management. So having worked in a business school for 20 years, I built a system of knowledge transfer and change management anchored in the work of experts like Peter Drucker and John Cotter, Charles Handy and Edgar Schein in organisational culture, and organisational psychologist Kurt Lewin. And I thought about the classroom and the dynamic relationship between the teacher and the student. And we built in Socratic method and discovery learning and what Lev Vygotsky taught us about proximal development. Because writing is the great revealer. When you have exhausted your capacity on the page, it is the role of the teacher to move you beyond. And I added in Albert Bandura's work on social learning because modelling is so powerful. But if we want our teachers to model good writing in our classrooms, we have to teach them how to be better writers first. So that's what we do. And then I tackled technology because we live in a digital age. And we've known that for 3 decades that computer-aided learning can improve academic results. However, as Erickson and Halswell point out in their 2006 study, the great proportion of computer-aided learning platforms focus on the digital delivery of content, and they make no attempt to integrate any aspect of guided instruction. The educator in me wanted to fix this, but my challenge didn't involve just building a computer system that would teach you how to write. That's not really what my challenge was. My challenge was the young person in your classroom who's already switched off writing, who doesn't believe they can write. They're fearful, reluctant, unmotivated. How do you teach that person using a computer program? And at the same time, how do you push and challenge the gifted and talented youngster who already think they know all there is to know about writing? And so we built a computer program that would work with you emotionally as well as cognitively, that the young person would want to use it to learn how to write. And one in that most teachable moment, when they're most ready to learn, would help them with their writing skills, and artificial intelligence for student writing that reads your work, works out your strengths and your weaknesses as a writer, knows the 30 things you're doing really well and the 30 things that you need to improve, and then step by step gives you immediate feedback in that teachable moment and moves you forward as it teaches you on a developmental pathway, whatever your writing level. And one that would give classroom teachers and school leaders real-time data on their students and their writing, so you could make timely decisions about your entire school and what might you do to transform the educational outcomes in front of you and the hopes of the parents who've invested their lives in the schools in which they support. And then you break this all down, as Appleby and Langer said, into an easy-to-understand set of writing skills for any subject area, for any child, that a parent, a teacher, and a student just get it. Taught every year behind the delivery of content, from the first year of school to the last. So when that young person is ready to pursue the life opportunities they hold inside, they are truly ready. In independent testing in New Zealand, my program has already been shown to double the effect scores in children and their writing. The average effect score, which shows a child is advancing each year at the required level, is 0.4. You know this, educators. The average effect score in writing for my program is between 0.87 and 1.2. But what would happen if you took such a program to a nation who did not know it, to schools who are looking for an answer, and walk alongside them, not just one or two schools, to see change, but 71 in the Australian state of Queensland? And tonight, it's my privilege to show you what happens. The first question is, who are these schools and where were they located? The 71 schools in this study had a total school roll of 78,199 students. 42 of them were state schools, 29 were private schools. And they were spread across our schooling system. 11 were primary, 17 were a mix of year levels, 43 were high schools. And again, they were a mix of all boys, girls schools, and coeducational schools. 56 were coeducational. 11 were boys' schools and 4 were all girls' schools. These schools were spread right across Queensland. 15 were here in Brisbane's CBD area. 17 were metropolitan schools. 38 were regional schools. And 1 school is classified as remote. Actually, I'll tell you who it is. In June, Peterton State School. There are more snakes than people in June, but my goodness, they are remarkable people. The parents in that small community were so concerned about their students' writing ability, they held barbecues to raise the money to bring the program in their school. Just remarkable. Largest school in this sample, the largest one, had 3,244 students, the smallest, 56. The average school size, 1,105. These schools span the economic, geographic, and social divide. They were a picture of us. Second question is, what's the methodology? All the schools in this study adopted and implemented Writer's Toolbox into their school between 2018 and 2020. Most did so in 2019. That is, by the time of the 2021 NAPLAN test in May of that year, the majority of schools in this study had been using these methods and system in their schools for 2 years. It had become part of how they did writing. It had become integrated in their curriculum, their practice. Their teachers had authentic skills. And I chose the first year of this study as 2016. It's the baseline, if you like. And the reason for this is strategic. 2016 offered me clean data. No school in Australia was using my writing program in 2016. The first schools did not reach out until November of 2017 when 2 schools in Queensland asked for assistance. So 2016, if you like, gives us a clear snapshot, unvarnished, of how the present methods of writing instruction are producing outcomes. And from a research perspective, my hypothesis was this. Could the Writer's Toolbox program trigger an obvious lift in writing improvement across an entire schooling system? Not 1 or 2 schools, not 5 or 10, but an entire schooling system. For to do this would mean several things, and these form the aims, the research aims of my study. Firstly, to test the writing system was robust, that the system could be taught and replicated and used by several thousand teachers, and then successfully taught to students, that they could both understand, apply it, and want to use it. The second research aim was this, that the writing system could trigger a clear lift in writing performance across quite different schooling environments. Because if it was only a system that could work in a well-endowed, well-resourced school, that would be no system at all. Could this approach work in schools of any type or any socio-economic status? The third was this. Could the system work across all age levels? Many of the world's writing programs, and they're good, but they focus on primary school aged writing. Could we build a system that would work with students of any age and any ability level and improve any type of writing? And the final question, the final research aim was this. And for me, this is partly a personal question. Could we build a system bigger than a person? An individual might help push change in 3 or 4 schools. If you're lucky, you might even do 10 schools, just by the sheer force of your personality. But could this system be robust enough and deep enough to work across 30, 40, 50, or 71 schools? And we could test this outcome statistically so that we would absolutely know, using confidence intervals, that these results were not just down to chance, but something really significant had actually occurred. Our approach in each school was the same. Teachers attended professional development workshops where they were trained in the Toolbox writing system. Here, they learned about sentence styles. They learned about sentence functions, composition skills, paragraphing, deeper thinking skills for writing, fluency, structure, form, argumentation. And they learned how to drive the online tool. They then integrated these methods into their classroom practice, and coaches from our organisation came and worked alongside them. At the same time, we advised and we supported school leadership on the effective integration of this writing system into their schools. Students then used the online tool to get immediate feedback on their writing quality, to improve that work, and it was fully differentiated according to their age and writing ability. And we watched the results. So what happened? Well, anecdotally, teachers reported high levels of capability teaching writing. They knew themselves how to teach writing better. Teachers reported higher levels of student engagement, confidence, and better writer quality. As a result, they also reported less time spent marking. In school internal and school external examinations, schools in the study reported higher outcomes and increased performance in writing-related tasks. And this feedback was gratifying, but it wasn't enough. I wanted an objective measure. One where the measure was not judged by the school or the students or the individual teacher. And NAPLAN provided me this opportunity. For although it's not without its criticisms, and I understand that, NAPLAN provided me an objective measure to writing improvement. Moreover, it provided as well longitudinal data, as well as state and like school comparisons. And from a research perspective, that was very helpful. It's also a full data set. Every Australian student, years 3, 5, 7 and 9, are tested. So NAPLAN provided a way of measuring the impact of my writing program across every single one of these year levels. And in this final section of the presentation, I want to do 2 things. I want to show you the NAPLAN charts for each of these year levels. And then I'll show you what the results look like at the level of the school. What actually happened. The first year level I'd like to consider is year 3. And this chart shows the NAPLAN writing results for Queensland year 3 students, initially in 2016 and then in 2021. The vertical axis on all the charts I'm going to show you is the standardised writing scores in NAPLAN. The horizontal line are the 2 year points, the NAPLAN scores for 2016 and 2021. All of the data I'm showing you now comes from the ACARA website, ACARA being the Australian Curriculum, Assessment and Reporting Authority, the independent statutory authority charged with the vision to inspire improvement in the learning in Australia and the ones who set our national expectations and outcomes. What does this chart show us? Well, you can see immediately the line has a gradient. It shows the percentage gain in writing improvement between 2016 and 2021 was 1.15%. Queensland, as a state, is still below the national average for writing in Australia, but the line is moving upwards. Now let me talk to you for a moment about a Year 3 student. By Year 3, a student has mastered a sentence, and they are making their first attempts at paragraph writing. Teachers are using recount to engage on-demand writing, and students will frequently write about what they did at the weekend. None of these should be occurring. None of them. By Year 3, a student in Australia should have been taught not 1 or 2, but 6 different sentence styles. 6. And before they ever reach the paragraph, they should have been taught what teachers 100 years ago used to teach before paragraphing, the art of expansion. Expansion is working with 3 sentences on a single topic. And through this child learns focus and depth of expression. So when paragraphing comes along, they are ready. And you stop teaching recount, because recount writing destroys the synthetic processing skills of a child. And instead, you teach them themes and you teach them fluency. And when you do these things for a Year 3 child in Australia and Queensland, here is what happens. The orange line is the Year 3 students of the schools in the present study, where writing was taught differently. And while the state of Queensland saw a 1.15% improvement, the Writers' Toolbox schools saw on average 3.63%. The difference, the percentage gain difference, is 3 times greater across the Toolbox schools than Queensland schools. What happened at Year 5? Year 5 is a crucial year for the child as they near their final year of primary school. And they're now fully immersed in simple and compound and complex sentences and the single paragraph form. And here's the trend line for Queensland Year 5 NAPLAN. 2016, the Queensland Year 5 NAPLAN average writing score was 466. By 2021, 5 years later, it had risen 2 points. It's a percentage gain of 0.3 of 1%. But what would happen? What would happen if you took a group of Year 5 teachers and students and you taught them 10 sentence styles and 2 forms of the paragraph, and you teach them about expansion once again, and precision and fluency? This happens. While the state rose 0.3%, these 28 schools rose on average 1.62. That's 5.4 times greater than the state of Queensland. 5.4 times the growth. And what was previously a 4-point gap is now a 10-point gap between them and the state. And while you might argue, oh, that's just more capable writers getting better. Yes, they are. But what happened to the more capable writers in the state of Queensland? Where are they in that graph? What do we do for them? Year 7 is a very different picture. Year 7 ushers in a significant time for the student. They enter high school, and writing, which was formative and joyful in primary school, now commences a different tact. It's a journey where writing increasingly becomes the dominant means by which the student demonstrates knowledge acquisition, their understanding of what we have taught them. And to do this, a student entering an Australian high school should be able to cast a sentence at least 6 different ways, on demand, and write a paragraph 3 different ways. And the average Australian Year 7 student, I know I've tested them, can only write 3 different sentence styles and 1 form of the paragraph, typically Peel. And that's a problem. We have underprepared our students for the cognitive demands they face under which they are placed. They do not have the sentence fluency to write concisely yet or powerfully. They do not possess the paragraphing skills to express the higher order thinking that we demand. So here is the Year 7 NAPLAN result for Queensland. And as I said earlier, we are the first generation of teachers in 100 years to only teach 1 form of the paragraph in our schools. It's absurd. The young person requires a range of paragraph structures to reveal on a page the sophistication of the thinking skills and the cognitions we demand of them. You cannot demonstrate synthesis, extrapolation, distillation, derivation, critical analysis, induction, synthesis in a Peel paragraph. It's impossible. We have to teach a range. It's time to rediscover what we as teachers have lost and give our students the thinking and the writing tools they need to do the job. For when we do, this is what happens. The orange line is 60 schools in Queensland, who on average in 2016 were well behind the state, but taught the rules of composition using artificial intelligence inside Toolbox. They've not only caught up the state of Queensland, they have overtaken them. Their rate of writing improvement is double the state. And that 3-point deficit is now a 4-point gap. And that gap will continue to grow in those schools. I guarantee it. Because now I want to talk to you about Year 9. By Year 9 in schooling, 2 things occur. The link between emotions, how you feel, and brain power, what you know, is stronger. And on the extremities, this has a double effect in education. Those who are confident writers, whose belief in their ability is rooted in authentic skill, begin to enjoy increasing amounts of success in our schooling system. And at the other end of the spectrum, those who are reluctant writers, whose self-belief is low, whose confidence is low, these things after 9 years of schooling are entrenched. They feel and they believe they can't do writing. Moving students by Year 9 is very difficult because it's a battle of emotions and of the brain. And secondly, by Year 9, the cognitive load on these students has increased and will continue to do so across their final 2 years of schooling. It's become tougher. And if we do not teach them an increasingly sophisticated set of skills, they will continue to slip. The A student drifts into the B range as they get older. The B student drifts into the C range. The school which had 25% of its students in the upper quartile in year 7 will see this percentage drop further and further as those students get older. And it's a writing problem. And so one hypothesis would say that by year 9, emotions and entrenched feelings pitched against us, you would not expect the same level of gain when you teach them new writing techniques. There's already significant emotional and cognitive withdrawal. Well, here is the Queensland writing result for year 9, the NAPLAN. And as you would expect, it's quite hard to shift. Between 2016 and 2021, the state percentage gain in writing improvement was 0.71%. What happens when you give year 9 a very different set of skills? This is what happens. That's what happens. Those schools, and some of them are either here tonight or watching online, have completely eclipsed the state. Completely. The rate of writing improvement, 2.6 times greater. And that is something worth celebrating. Because those teachers and those school leaders have just laid the foundations for a very different outcome for their young men and young women. So I have one final question of this data, one final question. And I wanted to take on the toughest year. I said, what about the boys? The research on boys and writing is very clear internationally. So difficult has it been to get boys write well. In some countries and territories, there can be a 2-year gap by the time of year 9 or year 10. Boys are 2 years behind girls. But I believe boys can write. I believe boys can write just as well as anyone. We just needed to give them the tools in a way they could get it. So here is the graph for Queensland Year 9 boys. And right now, it's not good to be a boy in Queensland and write. I can hardly get that line on the page. It's flatlining. The percentage improvement is 0.2%. The message, boys can't write. Now, I don't have the tools to isolate all the boys in our study. I know there's about 35,000 of them, give or take. Akara have those tools. I do not. I have the 11 boys' schools who are part of this study, who had Year 9 boys. And if I put them all together and you teach boys differently about writing, this is what happens. The rate of improvement is 9.6 times the state. 9.6 times. In fact, let's put all of Australia's boys on this chart. Why not? Let's put every single boy, Year 9 boy in Australia, and see what happens. I want that green line in Australia to be a different shape. It deserves to be. Those boys deserve it. The notion that boys can't write is a total myth. We just need to give them the tools. The next question, of course, is this. Are these findings meaningful or robust statistically? Can you trust them? Or was this just down to chance? To do this, we ran a t-test on the data using confidence interval of 10%. That same interval is applied across social science research. At all year levels, the results were statistically significant. The p-value is less than 10%. The analysis supported the hypothesis that the intervention of the Toolbox program, rather than chance, was responsible for this growth, this uplift. In fact, the Year 7 confidence interval matched the confidence intervals level set for testing pharmaceutical drugs. Such was the confidence we had that this result was not due to chance. And stats tell one picture, but what does it look like at the level of the school? The school. And here again, we use public data. You can see this tonight. And the longitudinal trend lines from the ACARA website to measure on a school-by-school basis. And ACARA publish this every year, and you can also see the trend lines for like schools. And this is now what it looks like at the level of a school. This sort of transformation. Here is Noosa District State High School. What better place to have a school than Noosa? It's beautiful. Though it's got very expensive since COVID, actually. Noosa District State High serves the Noosa region and has 1,000 students. It's co-ed, years 7 to 12. Only once in recent history has this school come slightly above like schools in Year 9 NAPLAN writing results. And the trend in all the subsequent years had shown a decline in performance. School leadership were concerned. In 2019, the school contacted us and commenced a program of staff development to build capability in their teachers. And they used the online writing tool. The result of 566 in the 2021 NAPLAN writing was not only a complete reversal of the downward trend, they eclipsed like schools. Go Noosa. Here's St John Fisher College. It's a Catholic secondary girls' college located 18 kilometres north of Brisbane city. It's in the suburb of Bracken Ridge. There are 560 students administered by Brisbane Catholic Education. And St John Fisher is known for its co-curricular program and its strong emphasis on Catholic values of faith, kindness, honesty, and compassion. And they do this brilliantly. At the same time, the school leadership were concerned that their writing performance did not match performance in other areas of the school. And so they brought us in to assist to transform this and turn it around. And the 2021 Climb and NAPLAN results to not only emerge from a 4-year trough, but outperform like schools is a testament to this work. Now let's go to Dakabin. Dakabin State High was built in the late 1970s, like many Brisbane schools, to accommodate the expanding population. It's co-ed, 30 kilometres from the CBD, 1,040 students. And it prides itself on offering their students strong academic and artistic opportunities. However, leadership were concerned that students were struggling with writing. And so they put in place a comprehensive program of staff development and writing instruction. And we came in to support them in their lowest point in 2019. And now Dakabin State High School is a turnaround story. It has completely closed the gap in Year 9 writing. And staff and students report high levels of confidence and renewed energy and enthusiasm for writing. Now let's go to Tallawong. This is Tallawong State High, northwest of Caboolture, 56 kilometres north of Brisbane. It has a roll of 1,100 students and again a co-ed 7 to 12 school. Tallawong State High has a great relationship with the University of the Sunshine Coast and a superb VET program. But like Dakabin, by 2019, writing was in the tank. So leadership got behind a sustained program of staff development, coaching, and the online tool. And the teachers, able to help students in ways that were not previously possible, have achieved a magnificent turnaround story. And finally tonight, I'd like to take you to the outback and to a little place called Injune, north of Roma at the foot of the Carnarvon Ranges. 12 teachers, 80 students, 6,000 snakes. And a parents and citizens association that will do anything for their children. The Writers' Toolbox system was adopted at every year level in the school, and the Year 5 results revealed the significant gain that this small outback school achieved. They didn't just match, they have outperformed like schools. And this is what that looks like at the level of the child. Because here's Hayden. And here's how Hayden wrote from in June, the start of 2019. Wasn't very good. Hayden was full of ideas. Rich. My goodness, that young man's fantastic. But we needed to give him the thing that only teachers could do. The gift of writing in a way that Hayden would just get it. And there is a result just 9 months later. That boy had things to say that deserved to be heard. So what can we do? Or what can we say? I think there are just 3 final things in closing. Firstly is this. The results of this study show that a whole school writing approach based on the explicit teaching of writing and supported by computer technology can trigger an entire system change in writing outcomes for schools. And I think the context of Queensland is significant because the state has come under criticism for an inability to reverse a downward trend in writing results. But the 71 schools in this study show that day may not be very far ahead. It can be reversed within the space of 2 years. Indeed, multiple schools in this study are not only outperforming the state or national averages in writing, they have overtaken like schools. There was no change in school curriculum, no change in content, just explicit instruction in writing. Secondly, the whole school common language approach of the Toolbox system makes it accessible to specialists and non-specialists alike. In the school's report, this has been a contributing factor in the successful adoption of the program across those thousands of staff. It's not just seen as the domain of English, because writing and helping a child or a young man or woman to write is every teacher's responsibility. Finally, computer technology to support student learning is now commonplace. However, schools reported that the differentiation provided by Toolbox allowed them to meet individual student needs at the level of the classroom. And the immediate feedback provided by that online system and the artificial intelligence meant that students got feedback in their most teachable moment. Their most teachable moment. These students in the 71 schools of this study across the spectrum of our society here in Queensland now have an authentic chance at realising the life goals and aspirations they possess. I'm going to give the final word this evening to somebody else. Because any innovation, from Thomas Edison to James Dyson, any innovation is not an innovation because the Creator says so. That's not the definition. It is because the user says so. It's an innovation. It's because someone says, in using this, my life, my outcomes are truly better. And so I'm going to end tonight with a short video tribute and let some of the teachers and the students in this study speak to you. Thank you for listening. May God bless you in your work.
When I first arrived at Dakaban, we did not have a writing program, but we were trying everything. We were looking for that answer that was a school-wide program. And that's what we found in Writer's Toolbox. One of the main reasons that we wanted Writer's Toolbox in the school was to improve those NAPLAN results. Writer's Toolbox has really changed that for us. So I have those results here with our NAPLAN, and here was that really low spike for us. What's interesting is that 2019 group, they are now our Year 12 students. So I was very concerned about how they would go under the new ATAR system. We had 5 perfect IA2 persuasive results at our school, 25 out of 25. And we have never ever come close to those sort of results before. So our Year 12s are amazing. So they have gone from here and they are just excelling, and that is really exciting for us. So there is much to celebrate, and we really believe that Writer's Toolbox is responsible for that.
So should we tell them, Jackson, what we both have in common? Well, apart from the fact that we love the Writer's Toolbox.
Yeah, go on.
Well, both our parents work here.
And his mum teaches me and my mum teaches him.
Yep.
So Ben, what do you think of Writer's Toolbox?
Oh, the Writer's Toolbox is absolutely amazing. Since I've been writing grade 7, it was good. It was just lacking that bit, you know?
Yeah, my mum would agree with that.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, about a year ago, I've discovered the Writer's Toolbox, and it has such great features, such as giving me explicit feedback and helps me craft my amazing paragraphs and sentence, such as the W start. That, you know, that the book thief assessment we just did?
Oh yeah.
It's given my writing that extra bit of flair. It's just amazing.
Arriving here at Yamundi State School with one of the main goals being a lift in writing, I wanted to introduce Writer's Toolbox. Now, the reason why I wanted to introduce Writer's Toolbox to Yamundi is I only follow research-based practices. So unless the research actually has a backup that it's going to improve lift of students' writing outcomes, I wouldn't implement it. I love the fact that the feedback motivates boys. When they see the graph of their sentence and their strength and they're looking beside it, their friend beside them and they're saying, well, how did you get that number? And then they're looking for the feedback and then they're trying. It motivates the students to do it. One of the best moments is when you take the teachers away for the training or you expose them back at school with the actual program and the way of implementing it, and they get that aha moment. They get that moment where they just say, this just makes sense. And then they take it on board, they're engaged, they're excited, and they're teaching it with their students.
Hi, my name's Avia and I like volleyball.
Hi, my name's Tom and I do karate every day after school. I like writing because it can show my imagination on a page and I can expand it and edit it. And Writer's Toolbox has helped me to improve my grammar and punctuation and more words and sentence types. And that percentage has helped me to grow because it shows me what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right.
Yeah, Writer's Toolbox helped him as well. It's helping him correct the spelling, fluency, and his sentence length, and it's helping him making more engaging for the reader. And it's just every time he makes a mistake, he goes and checks his feedback, finds the mistake, and works on it and makes it better.
Because before I found Writer's Toolbox, my punctuation was terrible. It was really bad. But after that, I'm actually getting a lot better because it's improved and shown me what I need to do.
So over my 11 years teaching at Somerville House, writing has always been something that I've wanted to improve on, as I love teaching maths and science and technology. So, you know, it's not that I couldn't do it, it's just that I was always looking for ways to do it better. You know, I find Writer's Toolbox allows me to enhance that, and it has it there ready to go, and I feel as though I'm not missing the mark on teaching those skills because it's all in one program. My advice to teachers or schools thinking about using Writer's Toolbox, if you choose to make the commitment to it, it does encompass so many different elements of teaching that are needed and required, especially if you're a data-driven teacher like me. I find that that drives me in the right direction. It gives me the confidence. And I think even after my 2-day training, I had more confidence as a writer, just a personal writer, thinking, oh, I didn't think I could do that. And my writing, seeing that improve, I thought, well, if I can do it, students can do it. And so I think it not only builds my confidence, the student confidence, it just supports you when you feel like you don't know where to go to.
So I love writing. I feel that it really frees up my creativity and lets me just express myself. So I love doing the daily challenges because, well, it gives you a challenge, one thing, and also because I love how there can be things like write a story with 63 words, but every sentence must have a word that starts with B in it or something. I really love using Writer's Toolbox. I think it's really great to build up the confidence in writers.
What this program can do that just doesn't happen very easily, organically, is just the momentum that it's able to build around writing so that you have, I think, just generally more confident students. And particularly in this age where we're moving into external examinations, you really want, by the time that they're at that stage, the writing to be very much internalized, they're not thinking about it. And I think you have to have something in place where you've got all the common language and it's embedded and there's that space practice, that multiple repetition. I think that, one, you have a bit more staff buy-in than usual, and so you have a greater chance of success sitting within a program like this to really get that, what is effectively a whole school culture.
I always feel like writing, we've always said to kids, write with flair, write with flair. And this has actually given us the language to do that. And so for me as a teacher, I feel like I've actually got the tools to do that. It's demystified what good writing is. And I think for an English teacher coming in who's never taught English, it teaches them grammar, it teaches them punctuation, and it teaches them the power of the way words position. I'm extraordinarily excited about this, I really am. It's actually very sincere. You've probably noticed before that I actually almost cried and almost felt quite emotional about it. And the reason I do is because I know that if kids can write, they have the keys to the kingdom. And being able to write gives them access to university, it gives them access, and if they've got access to university, they've got access to everything.